Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we are at 308 Donald Lane here in Newburgh. I describe everything as if you're standing in the street facing the front of the house. We are just to the right of the front door. It's a trickier clean out to hunt. It's actually a great big crawl space, but the ductwork makes it very difficult to follow the line out to the last moment. So just take note of this. It's to the right of the front door as you face the house from the street. The clean out lines up almost perfectly with this electrical outlet. So it's straight out in front of it. It's about 2 feet out from the house. It's a little further out than your average clean out. That's partly why it makes it a little trickier to hunt down. Anyway, we're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is running. So again, we're dropping into 3-inch ABS pipe here. Alright, off we go. That is one super duper clean flow line right there. That is how you want your line to look. I've got a bathtub running right now, putting a lot of water down the pipe. We'll get a nicer view of things as we come out, but the flow line here is spotless clean. Making a transition there to concrete pipe. Almost looks like a city clean out there, or test Y, test T connection. I'll locate to see if any of the concrete pipe resides within homeowner territory or not. In this part of town, Newburgh, typically speaking, the city takes responsibility for the line at the right-of-way. And thus far, the concrete pipe is very much doing its job and is in pretty darn good shape. Just of the pipe materials, you know, between plastic and concrete generally speaking does not hold up as long as ABS plastic does. It's a little more prone to some issues, especially at the pipe joints. Either the joints wearing out, root intrusions, things like that. The pipe material also has a more finite existence. Concrete just slowly but surely wears out. Same way your driveway goes from smooth to rough, bumpy aggregate over time. Same thing happens to concrete. It has a much more finite wear life on it. So I'll let you know if that transition, usually they're at the right-of-way, so my guess is probably all ABS pipe within homeowner responsibility, but we shall see. Hit the main here at about 58 feet, and we may very well be in 6-inch concrete. The line, I think, may have bumped out to 4-inch ABS just before it transitioned to concrete, but we'll watch that as we come in here. And it looks like we're tying right into the manhole. Alrighty, so if you, in this case, imagine you are standing right at the clean out and you look straight away from the clean out. You draw an imaginary straight line from the clean out to the road. You're going to see two manholes. One lines up almost perfect with the clean out. It's also the one that's furthest away from the house on the further side of the street. That is the manhole the line ties into. There's a manhole that's not quite as lined up with the clean out that's closer to the home. That's not the one the line runs into. So the line meanders a little bit, but it just about runs dead straight the entire way to the main. Gets way on the other side of the road there. Those are just cobwebs there. Have a fair amount of those in the line. Not roots though. Anyway, this is a really, really nice example of how to treat your line. It's rare to see a line this clean. Even households that are being fairly mindful of not putting grease and oil down the pipe. That's the number one thing that gunks your pipe up over time. Obviously, wipes, paper towels, flushable wipes, things like that you want to avoid too. But grease is a major contributing factor to a lot of blockages, and a lot of blockages that result in backups. A lot of blockages will block temporarily, but a lot of times will bust loose on their own. If your line's clean, that's assuming your blockage is made out of proper stuff like toilet paper, not a bunch of paper towels. So it's one of the reasons why you want to keep your line clean. It makes your line much more forgiving under those scenarios. The concrete pipe looks fantastic. Superbly clean, graded perfectly. There's zero standing water. Looks great. Alright, so the transition to concrete pipe is about 5 feet from the sidewalk edge, in case you're curious. And the concrete pipe looks great. There's no issues with it whatsoever. I would highly recommend not planting anything else So where the line ends up crossing the curb is about where the for sale signpost is. It's about 8 feet or so to the left of the driveway. There's already a little maple over there. I would just make sure you don't plant anything else in that area, especially around transition joints, even more so when it's a transition to concrete pipe. They're just weaker joints to roots. It looks like I think we're bumping out of diameter here. It's hard to tell. The joint right here that we're going is just slightly out of whack, and it might be just giving the appearance of a diameter change. Yeah, I think we remain 3" through there. I think it's just 3" ABS and 4" concrete is what that's looking like. So the line does a little bit of a zig and a zag at first, and then once it straightens out there at the concrete pipe, it just runs dead straight. Anyway, if you want to keep your line this clean, I do highly recommend doing that. Biggest culprit and habit to it is grease, and it's a really good living habit to build in, especially if you have kiddos in the house that are still learning how to fold toilet paper and like to ball it up like a softball. And the general rule of thumb that I tell most people to live by, that'll mitigate the overwhelming majority of buildup, is if you've got enough grease or oil on your cooking pans, that if you were to turn that pan sideways, like you were going to dump stuff off of it, if there's enough on there that it runs off the pan in beads or worse, it's at that point you want to do something about it. And we just went back to the foundation. Well, everything from this point on is fully exposed piping. It's very easy to see in the crawl space. Not stuff you need a camera for. Anyway, it's at that point you want to do something about it. Well, it's in a liquid state still. You can pour it into a glass jar or metal can, something that it won't melt. And or you let the grease or oil cool down, and then wipe it out with a paper towel or scrape it off into a garbage can after it's cooled. So, thin little coating of PAM spray, not a big deal. Hot water and soap handles that just fine. If you know some amount did get down line, one of the things that you can do, not a lot of folks do, is keep your hot water running as hot as possible for about a full minute after that last dish was washed off. That helps to ensure anything that did get down line, it helps to keep it melted and emulsified until it gets out to the main, or at least a good distance from the house before it starts to harden up. Hot water is great through the crawl space area because it's insulated, it remains hot. Once that pipe hits the outside where it's buried underground, that hot water starts to cool off really quickly, especially if you shut your water off immediately after you wash your last dish off. It starts to cool down really fast. And what you'll see are households that do that, the interior pipe will stay spiffy clean, and then all your grease buildup will harden up the moment the line leaves the house. So it's a little trick you can do to help keep stuff moving along until it gets out to the main, or at least far away from the house where you want it to be. Alrighty, great flow end to end here. Super clean line. Nothing about that line I could even nitpick. Everything looks great. Sewer line is functioning properly at this time.